I'm Tim Hartzell, and this is a Kroger Company case study. The Kroger Company is the largest traditional grocer in the United States and the sixth largest retailer in the world. It operates 2,761 retail locations across 35 states, supported by 44 distribution centers and 36 manufacturing plants. When we evaluate the organization, it's also important to evaluate the industry that it belongs in. And one way we can do that is completing a Porter analysis. A Porter analysis looks at the 5 forces that affect every industry. Those are the rivalry among competing firms, the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitutes, the bargaining power of suppliers, and the bargaining power of buyers. According to Ralston, a company that properly utilizes the Porter model can make defenses against each force and make itself more profitable. Most industries fall in the middle and face a mixture of these forces. For the grocery industry, rivalry among competing firms is very high. Traditional grocers have always been aggressive with slashing prices and fighting for locations. Non-traditional competitors have seen the value the volume sales grocery items provide and the foot traffic they bring. So they've expanded their offerings and even expanded into the market. So the rivalry among competing firms is very high. Next is the threat of new entrants. It's very low for a startup because the barriers are very high. The prime locations are gone, the startup costs, the distribution costs. The top 20 firms in the U.S. grocery stores have 2/3 of the sales. So it's not very attractive to a startup. But what we've seen is a company that has a strong distribution network already can easily enter into the marketplace and be successful. So that's why the threat of new entrants is very high. The threat of substitutes is also high because people have many options with restaurants, with meal solution companies that deliver to their home, Postmates, DoorDash. Those companies also provide access to hundreds of restaurants in the area that are delivered to you. So the threat of substitutes is just very high. The bargaining power of suppliers has been diminished over time, mostly because of the size of the top 20 grocers has grown. They have more buying power and market share, and they've created their own logistic networks that allow them to move products around and be more profitable. But the rise of private brand development has created substitutes to the national brand products, which has diminished their bargaining power. And finally, we come to the bargaining power of buyers, which is very low. Most of the buyers are single families. This is a small ticket purchase, and these items are needed for their daily life. So they really have no power at the register and impact the grocery industry very little. Once we've completed a industrial analysis, then we can move to the internal audit. And one way of doing that is to complete a SWOT analysis. According to David and David, if we use this tool effectively, we can focus on our strengths and minimize our weaknesses while finding opportunities and being wary of the threats that we may face. Like any company, Kroger has some strengths. One of them is economies of scale. Because they service such a large footprint and they have so many customers, each additional customer is cheaper to service. So by sheer volume, they become more profitable. Their logistics network and their ability to keep their products fresh and in stock is a large strength, and they have a competitive advantage by manufacturing their own private brands when most grocers do not through their manufacturing division. So that's a very strong strength. Kroger does have some weaknesses, one of them being their liquidity. As a company, they have aggressively grown through acquisition, which has raised their debt. this growth is good. They need to be aware of the rising debt and make sure that they don't come into a free cash problem. Branding is another weakness. They operate subsidiaries, 23 of them to be exact. So when you're facing a company with such a recognizable name like Walmart, it does not help you that you have consumers in your markets that don't realize that they're even shopping a Kroger market. Your branding and association isn't there because they think they're shopping a different company. Maybe a rebranding and putting everyone under the same banner would be helpful. And then their jewelry stores. While diversification of your business model is normally very good and very profitable situation, in this case, 253 locations only account for 0.2% of total revenue, and it's just not a very profitable business for them. Next, we move to opportunities. Manufacturing growth, more private label, creating more organics, providing more substitutes to national brands in their stores is a great opportunity. An online platform that has a synergy with the brick and mortar business will be very profitable as a big opportunity for the future. And expanding their value services, their retail services, their clinics, their pharmacies, their fuel centers is a big value add, and make them a one-stop location for customers is a big opportunity. And like any organization, they do have threats. Rising labor costs in the United States, especially to a company that's 71% unionized, is a concern. Amazon bought Whole Foods. It has not fully dove into the grocery industry yet, but if they do enter the market, that could be a big major threat to the entire industry. And also Walmart continues to grow, take market share, cut prices, and make their new neighborhood markets, which are competing with the grocery chains at even a more local level, versus their strategy that the supercenters will draw people from all over. So those are the threats that Kroger faces. Next, we look at financials, and we see that income growth was steady through 2017, had a small dip in 2018, but still decent, results, especially since they've had the added competition of the supercenters and the new entrants into the marketplace. Then we look at, they've done a good job managing their inventory. Debt has rose, but assets has steadily rose as well. We look at the inventory turnover is in line with the industry average. Moving to the liquidity comparison with the industry, we see that debt to equity is high. That's due to the acquisitions, the 3.840 versus the 1.320. Need to be very careful here. If you have a change in the economy or a change in consumer spending, you could find yourself in a situation with free cash, and being able to meet your obligations. Kroger should work to pay down this debt and get themselves in line so they can continue to expand and grow and be successful. A look at the current ratio shows that a 0.757 on the industrial average of 0.760. They're right in line with their peers. It appears that they're maximizing their assets and should have no problem meeting their debt obligations. And then we look at the quick ratio and their most fluid assets, and they're below the industrial average. While that's not terribly below, it does show that they'll have a harder time if they need cash quickly to raise it versus their peers. But they raised their interest cover ratio 6.5 times. So they should have no trouble covering their interest obligations and meeting their debt obligations. It appears that financially, if they get that debt in line, they'll be in decent shape. So moving to strategy, we see here the BCG matrix. We see the question marks, the e-commerce platform. That's a rising amount of market share that they could acquire if they get that platform up and running. Put Harris Teeter in the stars because when they acquired them as a subsidiary, Harris Teeter, a much smaller footprint, had a bigger online and better technology, a bigger online presence and better technology than Kroger had. So that was a very strategic acquisition, and it's helped further Kroger along. And then you look over in the dogs, you see the jewelry stores with the 0.2% of revenue. It's just not very profitable diversification of your business. Kroger does grow organically with their internal growth through sales and developing new stores, making their own products with their manufacturing division, and diversifying themselves by their service offerings and by the service quality that they provide. What I would recommend is that they further create cost leadership with their private brand and drive differentiation with their manufacturing capabilities and with their service offerings. As far as external growth, Kroger's strategy for external growth is they like to acquire companies that are in existing markets. That way it lessens the cost of advertising and marketing, but they will expand into new markets if they find a company that has a particular expertise or synergies that will help them across their entire business model. Harris Teeter is an example of that. They had a better online business and their technology was more advanced. And so they were able to take that and integrate that into Kroger as a whole when they acquired Harris Teeter and improve the company. They do have some backwards integration, not just the regular horizontal integration by acquiring new grocery chains. When they acquired Harris Teeter, for example, they also acquired Hunter's Farms, which is a dairy. So that is an example of where they have brought in a supplier and become their own supplier. Kroger has created some strategic partnerships. Ocado is going to do their fulfillment centers for that new online platform that they are investing in. Microsoft is doing some pricing and technology work with them, and Walgreens and them have a deal where they are going to offer each other's products in their stores. When we look at divestment, the convenience stores, they took that money and put towards their debt, and they sold those because they feel like they learned the synergies they needed from those fuel stations, from those gas stations, to go forward and create a good fuel center business for their grocery chains. And then Turkey Hill is a company that they felt like had become so recognizable as a brand that they were better off moving forward on their own. Kroger has some company initiatives, redefine the customer experience through e-commerce integration and with the brick and mortar business, to grow their private brand. They have some very valuable partnerships with Microsoft, Ocado, Home Chef. I didn't mention prior. It's a home meal solutions that will be offered inside the stores. They're developing their talent, feeding their future by hiring and investing in training to support their growth. And they're living with purpose. They want to really create a social impact and have a zero hunger, zero waste in their communities. My strategic recommendations is for them to aggressively pay down that debt to create more free cash so that they can stay competitive and keep growing. Aggressively expand that private brand selection by leveraging their manufacturing capabilities, creating cost leadership strategy and diversification over the other traditional grocery chains. Invest in creating a solid e-commerce business and integrate that and create synergies with their brick and mortar business. They should divest the grocery store division and use that to pay off some of their debt. It's just not profitable. And they should expand their value-added services, the pharmacies, the fuel centers, in as many locations as they are, and become a go-to for every customer they possibly can. And with that, it's my references, and thank you very much.